When times get hard, you don't know what to do. Are still scarred from the things you've been through. Families torn apart from these unjust rules. That's why we're right here fighting for you, baby. It's one love, one love. A change gonna save
my sister, I feel your pain. First you was in and out of court. Now they deported them and things will never be the same. Buddha knows you love them and always thinking of them, especially when the kids is bugging. Mommy, when daddy come, it's like you working 24/7, 365 every day, overtime with that stress on your mind. There's so much you wanna do, but you barely make it ends meet. Losing sleep thinking where they moved him or if he got to eat. He was only a teen when he shattered his dreams. Did his time for his crime, but they wanted everything. So he was picked out, shipped out, never to return again. Wife and children missing them, locked in this pain. And though this picture that I paint might be too vivid, for a few minutes, feel this pain. 'Cause every day we live it. To my sisters in the struggle, know that boy love you, and everything that I do is because you.
When times get hard, you don't know what to do. Are still scarred from the things you've been through. Families torn apart from these unjust rules. That's why we're right here fighting for you, baby. It's one love, one love. A change gonna save us.
Lost in a whirlwind, tricked by the busted system. They taking our brothers away, not knowing that we need them. My mama begged and pleaded. Punk lawyers lied and cheated. They make you think ain't no chance you ain't gonna beat it. The rules they been and twisted, man, the justice system. Let's rally up on real chop, gon' make them listen. Cut costs on education, breaking bread with private prisons. Ain't worried about they well-being, it's about commission. One love, gon' stand tough, play your position. Gon' keep them wet with black ink on white petitions. No drip drop, I can't cry, but damn I'm missing. Every time I'm looking at photographs, I'm reminiscing. TV had a vision, gon' make it epidemic. Now let's continue to fight, man, and spread the message. One love, we on a mission. Pulling covers, what's the business? Gon' hit them hard like Mack trucks and clear the vision.
When times get hard, you don't know what to do. Are still scarred from the things you've been through. Families torn apart from these unjust rules. That's why we're right here fighting for you, baby. It's one love, one love. A change gonna save us.
How can I be thankful when this the new Jim Crow, modern day slavery? I read it like a Kindle as we dwindle by the minute. Defenders can't prove they're innocent. Censorship, media got us brainwashed. We can't win if we killing each other. My best friend died, dog. How I'ma tell his mother? It's more to life. Take time to discover it. But the system got us on some. I stand tall, we gotta get organized. Side by side, cause they deprive our pride. American values, what happened to a second chance? Try to fill a brother's shoes in a circumstance. It's so hard when you pleading with Nimrods, writing a bad check, dog. How's that deportable? We gotta change this play and call an audible. It's one love movement for my families, we do this.
When times get hard, you don't know what to do. Are still scarred from the things you've been through. Families torn apart from these unjust rules. That's why we're right here fighting for you, baby. It's one love, one love. A change gonna save us.
I'm still scarred from the things you've been through. Families torn apart from these unjust rules. That's why we're right here fighting for you, oh baby. It's one love, one love. A change gonna save us.
Hi everyone, welcome. One love to everyone everywhere listening. I remember this song very clearly, so um, good to hear it again. And welcome to my panelists. Come on camera, folks, to see your beautiful faces. Kajra think this is a beauty contest. I'm paying alone, so we're not ready for her, but let her come on camera. Kajra, put your camera on. We're gonna get started pretty soon. And welcome everyone. Oh, look, see, I told you this is what happens. Good afternoon, everyone from the East Coast to West Coast, all around the world, all around the country. We have an amazing group of panelists joining us today as we end um, our last day for our week of action, our closing panel here. What you have are amazing organizers, our comrades and powerhouses who've been doing this work forever, who love movement as much as they love their community and their people. And so it was for us at the Southeast Asian Freedom Network. Uh, an honor to have a panelist of this magnitude. And so you are invited to an intimate conversation, a powerful conversation around what will it look like for us to reflect, to resist, and reimagine a community refuge for the next 50 years and beyond for Southeast Asian people in this country and people in this country in general and the world. And so, with that, um, folks I know are live on YouTube, Facebook, all those things are happening. We also have a graphic note taker that will be taking notes for all this, the conversation, and that we will share and that we will turn into artwork in a bit. Um, and so this chat, I think for us, as we are commemorating the 50th anniversary of the ending of the war, the present and political context that we're living in, every day, every moment. I mean, this morning, we got, uh, the news, the Supreme Court, ruling in favor of Trump and of sending people to third country a few days ago. And so we want to contextualize and have the conversation of all of that together. And it will bring together historians, grassroots activists, and visionaries for us to really reflect on the war, on the 50th anniversary, and what it really means for our allies and our partners and our collaborators and an accomplice for specifically for our Southeast Asian community. Um, are freedom fighters. And so as we commemorate, the goal tonight is to have those kinds of conversation and really share what the present day reality is for Southeast Asians, people who are experiencing gender-based violence from detention, deportations, and other communities, and how we're building solidarity and united front together. And so with that, I will introduce and share with you all a little bit of the panelists that you will see today, that will be joining us today. Um, our first speaker, our first panelist will be Lone Tran from Rising Majority. I don't know, the stream y'all do like claps like that and things like that. I guess I'm gonna have to do the virtual yay thing here. And say thank you, Lone, for joining us. I know you're also very busy. Lone is an organizer, a movement builder for the over 15 years and is based in the US South. And they were forged in the migrant justice movement led by queer undocumented young people. Lone currently serves as the national co-director of Rising Majority, a national Black-led and multiracial coalition convened by the Move for Black Lives in 2017 to build an anti-racist left for radical democracy here in the United States and abroad as well. Rising Majority has a vision toward 2050 and a 10-year power building strategy to get our people free. They serve as the co-chair of the Highlanders Research and Education Center and are a founding member of Viet Left Power as well. Welcome, Lone. And also a lover of beef jerky. If you all don't know, I know there's people on, beef jerky makers among us. Send Lone some beef jerky. Show Lone some love, right? Yes, I got you, Lone. Don't worry. We got Southeast Asian beef jerky makers on the panel. Our next panelist, the amazing, the most handsomest M. Adams. Yeah, see, where all the claps at? We didn't have the audio for that. M. Adams is a community organizer, fierce leader, and movement infrastructure executive with the Moon for Black Lives, born and raised in Milwaukee, in a community frequently targeted by police, economic exploitation, gender based violence, and other forms of violence. Adams knows the impact of such violence all too well. And being a survivor compels Adams to work as a, why am I saying Adams? As a prison abolitionist and a radical black queer gender nonconforming feminist organizer. And these commitment also fuel them to build their own family, as she's a proud dad and hubby, and she sees her family as the primary motivator of her work. And as a queer black person and a movement scientist, that's right, M really thinks that it's critical for us to build, that it's critical about power of oppression and movement building, and regularly applies the test of her intersectionality approach in diverse arena. And M is a lover of dogs and all things human. And so, yes, if you have dogs and pets, if you're human, M loves you. So welcome, M. Thank you for joining us today. Our next panelist, my co-conspirator, my co-executive director here, the the one and only Pheng Thao. Pheng serves currently as the co-director with me in Southeast Asian Freedom Network, as well as Sea Action. Woo! And prior to this role, Pang has been actively pioneering amazing new concepts of healthy masculine expressions over the last 20 years. Um, Pang truly believes that creating a healthy and healing connections and interconnection with men and masculine folks are necessary to transform their relationship with women, girl, LGBTQ, gender nonconforming folks, and not limit their full potential. Pang deeply, deeply believes that healing is an essential part of his work, and so he practices and moves with the intention of healing and wellness all the time. And so I get to be co with him all the time, and the healing is always there. And just so you all know, Peng is lover of anything spicy, and I'm talking about not just food. Um, right, Peng? Yes. And last and not least, our beloved friend, the most beautiful among us right now. So we'll crown you before we even start, Kajwa. Kajwa Vaj, freedom fighter, a gender-based violence expert for the last 30 years in the gender justice movement, have been pioneering such innovative approaches to understanding and addressing gender-based violence. She is a infrastructure builder of C3s, of C4s, of too many C3s, too many C4, of all things LLCs, etc. Um, and one of the co-founder actually of Freedom Inc., Freedom Action Now, Southeast Asian Action, even Southeast Asian Freedom Network, and Building Our Futures campaign. And so most of her work started when she was 16 years old. Folks don't know. It's been a lifetime for all of us here on the panel, of challenging and harmful gender norms and Kajra Center survivors and those most impacted in her work. She is recognized as a global movement leader and thought leader with skills in uniting and mobilizing diverse community. Kajra is founder and executive director of Moving Mountains as well. Her honors includes being named the White House Champion of Change, part of the Nova Movement to End Violence cohort, among the 20 women of color in politics to watch in 2020 and beyond. Um, She's also a proud mother, artist, and co-founder of Red Green River, a social enterprise. I can't even speak English sometimes, y'all. My apologies. It is not my first language. Um, and also and supporting women who are artisans, Southeast Asian women particularly, who are making these art. And she is definitely a lover of all people, and overall a lover of women and girls, and always and lover of movement. And so thank you, Movement Loves, for joining me today, as we engage in this conversation. My invitation for you all is we're friends having a conversation. You got beef with me, you got something to say it. So, and then the invitation is also to ask question. I know that when we have these conversations with one another in rooms, as we're strategizing and we're thinking, um, folks want to know, how do we do it? How do we have these conversations? And so today, people get to witness you all brilliant, but also the way in which we are caring and loving for each other, the way we have conversations, and the kind of ways in which we pour and into each other's thoughts and thinking. Um, with that, I just wanted to tell the audience that we have broken up uh, the format of the discussion into 4 distinct themes, and I will try as much as possible to keep us in those themes. Panelists, if you have anything to add, please do so. You don't have to. I will guide, but I will also be open to you all ask each other questions as well. In that way. And so the first theme is around connection, right? And so I'll ask a few questions, and then I will prompt you all to see who can answer. And then also, again, ask each other questions. If there's something that Pheng said that you thought was interesting or want to add to, or what Lone said, things like that, the invitation is there. And then audience, you get to ask questions later as well. The second theme is around reflection, particularly for us as Southeast Asian organizers and movement leaders at this moment. Doing a lot of reflection around what it is needed to build beyond the next 50 years in this country and beyond. What it is required of us. How do we make meaning of this moment? How do we build leaders? How do we build power and base in our community? And that means it requires us to do some reflection of what we've been and what we've been doing. The second part of the theme is around the third theme is around resistance. What are we doing? How are we fighting? What is happening on the ground? How are we engaging with each other? How do we build power? How are we building a united front at this moment to challenge this fascist government, who we know is a fascist government? We're going to have to say that out loud a little bit more time because people don't believe that we are. And this morning, it's pretty obvious they just legalized fascism with the naturalization stuff, not the birthright stuff. And the last point of conversation or theme will be around the reimagining, right? I know we're all in it day to day as we are nonprofit leaders, movement builders, organizers, sisters, brothers, mothers of the world and of our kids and of our family, that it is a moment for us to really begin to what it means to reimagine a world beyond what it is today, a world where our people are free. And so I will also have you all think about what that we, the bigger we, look like. And I will ask that question in the near future here. Are we ready? Yeah. So before we go into those questions, I invite you all to also do a collective breath, because sometimes I be forgetting you all to breathe, and you don't look like this without breathing. Just so you know. So if you wanna be fly like us, breathe. So the invitation is to do that, and also to go get some water if you need to at this moment. We need you focused as you all are watching us in YouTube, Facebook, everywhere here. And so I would say collectively, on a count of 3, as the panelists, let's take one breath in. 1, 2, 3. Hold for 4 and release. And so I invite you to continue to do that as we talk. So the first question I have, let me get here to the questions. And we have an amazing group of tech in the background, so clap to them as well. Claire, Huang, Ben, and I know we also have a graphic note taker, Sarah, who's also in the background. So thank you, folks, for making this possible. The first question that I have, okay, I'm moving here. Okay, and this is for all of you. Around what is the definition of home for you? What are you fighting for? What are you yearning for? You can choose any of those things, but to want to hear from you all specifically, what is home? What are you fighting for? And what are you yearning for? Any one of you all can go first if you're inspired to do so.
I'll jump in, Chhaya. Thanks for those beautiful intros. I don't think it's ever been included in my bio that I'm a lover of beef jerky. And so I feel like I want to add that officially so that it's always there. Yeah, I'm really grateful for SEAFN's work and to be on with all of you. My name is Lone. I use they, them, theirs pronouns. I'm the national co-director at Rising Majority. And, frankly, when I saw this question, I was like, oh, I haven't thought about this in a while. I actually haven't thought about what the definition of home for me means. And I think, a generous and positive interpretation of that is that I feel, connected mostly to people. Um, I was born in Vietnam. My parents came here after the war, and we've had to figure out how to make sense of things and make a life in Charlotte, North Carolina. And over the course of my lifetime, I've had to figure out the relationship between what it means to be in a place and what it means to be connected to people, right? Both my folks who are still in Vietnam and the folks that I've been building with here. And so for me, it's all about my sense of, who am I connected to and who's going to hold me to the task of making good choices and showing up well, and who's going to keep me pulled in, and who's going to both call me out and call me in when I'm messing up, who's going to give me my flowers, and who do I get to do that for as well. So I appreciate the question, because I was like, oh, I haven't thought about that in a while, but it's such a core question for all of us.
Thanks, Lone.
I was gonna
Hey,
go. I can go. This is
yeah,
Pheng.
I guess
Thank you
so.
for
Yeah.
the intro, Chhaya. Everybody else excited for this conversation. I was thinking about home in terms, maybe because I'm hungry at the moment. In terms of like the flavors, the flavor profiles that both includes the smells and the fragrances of lemongrass, fish sauce, coconut milk, to the rice being cooked and being soaked overnight as well too, or the sticky rice that's being steamed in the bamboo uh, basket, right? Or the steam rolls that are steaming, or the hot broth of soup, noodle soup that it provides warmth is what I'm talking about. Is that it provides warmth, it provides a place of like nurturance. It is a place of and a space where connections are made and relationships are built, and the deep yearning of like community is there, and the ability to just be with people who you find to be in community with, and that I find to find belonging with as well too. They may not necessarily share the same values or similar likings to what I like, but we are together and we are a part of each other. And I think about home as that. I think about my sons who have very different characteristics and very different appeals, but they still live in the same household, right? They still are siblings to each other. So I think about home in the most expansive ways, but in very constricted ways as well too, and the ebbs and flow of what that means, and how we imagine or reimagining what relationships could be involved in that as well too at the moment.
Thanks, Lone Pang. Casual M. Hmm.
Hey everybody, I'm really thankful to be here. And Chaya, those introductions they were amazing. Thank you. Uh the question you asked, what is home? Um Sometimes it feels really easy and simple to answer that. Like there's a part of me that just easily wants to say, oh, it's Milwaukee, gang, gang, right? That's where the bruh's at, my mom and them, my auntie and them, where I come from. It's the crucible that I was made in. And in another way, it feels really complex to answer that question. Being a Black person whose lineage or whose particular tribe is the descendant of enslaved people here in the US, the question of home feels really complex because it brings up a question of belonging. And as a diasporic people, right, Black people, African people, we are all over the world. And a lot of that, a lot of us being all over the world is a result of extreme violence, of war, of dispossession, of rape, and so many other types of structural and systemic violence that it feels unclear in some ways to say where home is exactly. And so, how I tend to approach that question is I think about um, where I belong, and then I think about my ancestors and what we deserve. And so, to me, I think home is being with those who choose you and who you choose back. I think about Bell Hooks, who teaches us that home place is a site of resistance, right? No matter where it is, if it's in your hut, your wooden hut, your alley, the corner, in an apartment, on the streets, it's the place where you are practicing being human, where you get to resist, where you get to say who you are and how it's going to go for you. And so, in that way, I feel like home can be anywhere. But today, I want to proudly say that I think um, I find home with those who are resisting and with those who are freedom fighters. And I just, as tough as this moment is, I'm very fortunate to have bond and connection in home with folks who are resisting right now.
Thank you, Kajwa.
Yes. So I think, I mean, as a child who was born right at the end of the war, and and then also being in Laos, of course, and then also being Hmong. I often thought, being in the U.S. and not belonging, that my home was Laos, and had longed to return. But when I was a student and went to study abroad in Thailand, quickly found out that as indigenous and tribal people, that that was also not my home. And then when I returned to Laos, I quickly found out that that was also not my home. And then when I met Hmong people in Vietnam, I quickly found out that that also wasn't my home. And it wasn't my home because though there were Hmong people there, I think that always being treated as second class or always being treated as other and not belonging, I've learned to understand that, and it I used to fantasize about how my liberation wasn't really here in the US because it was so messed up here. But then I went all over the world and I'm like, well, it's not there either. And so I think for me, home is just where my people are. Home is where my mother is. Home is where my children are. Home is where my family is. And so, as displaced people who've been displaced for thousands of years, as indigenous tribes, I've learned to build home wherever I'm at, and I've learned to create home wherever I'm at. And so, yeah, that's where I'm coming from today.
Thank you, Kajwa. Yeah, I won't answer it because home is you all for me too. I did answer it, like I just said it, but no, thank you for those comments and sharing that with us and getting for us to know you all a little bit more. And so this question, the next two questions that I'm going to ask you all to answer, has been something that Peng and I have been part of a somatics training program here that Rusia, we should name her, have been asking us, interrogating these questions. And the answer changed for me pretty often. And so I wanted um, to to prompt these questions for you all. So what is it that you're yearning for? Or actually, what is it that you're fighting for,
Great question. So I'll build off of the last question. I think we are fighting for home. I think we are yearning for home. And, that means the protection, the safety, and the honoring of the planet, right? It's like making sure the earth doesn't burn up because of fossil fuels and fracking and a bunch of terrible things. It's making sure that there's clean air, clean water, and that we all get to just have that and enjoy that because we're human beings on the planet. It is knowing that I could go outside, that my children could go outside and not be murdered by the police, or that my neighbor isn't captured and disappeared by ICE. It is, the fighting for, the yearning for is knowing that I can have home in my community and neighborhood because my dignity is honored. Who I am will be respected. I will be safe in my home. It is a world where I'm not experiencing sexual violence and intimate partner violence. And it's also being able to have home in my body, that my reproductive health needs are met, that who I am and how I want to express my gender is supported and affirmed in this society. And, so in many ways, I could say, or to sum that up, I could say, I am fighting for a world, or I am yearning for a world that is Black queer feminist, that is abolitionist, that is anti capitalist. And I think, to me, those things need to be in place to actually create the true home that I think I deserve and that other people deserve.
Thank you, M. The true home that all of us deserves. Pheng, what are you fighting for? What are you yearning for?
Yeah, I was thinking about to what Emma's sharing there, and I want to piggyback off of it as Emma was sharing. I was thinking about there's a sense of responsibility in what it is that we have to each other in creating and building what it is that we want to build and create in terms of the home and place, whether it be a physical place or a spacious place, or whether it be a non-physical place, whether it is an emotional yearning or an emotional attachment. There's a responsibility that I think we each have to have to one another in terms of how we do this and how we create this home and this place or this space that we're calling home. And the responsibility is the understanding of like what is my thing that I must do in order for the others to actually do what it is that they need to do. My sense of accountability to myself and the life and my own values and how I want to move in that. So I think a lot about that in this moment of like the practicality of the responsibilityness of each one of us having to each other and the sense of things that we may have to give up or may perhaps not be, it may not be giving up necessarily, but may have to like share and think about. And I think that there's such also even in our conversations or the sharings that we each shared earlier, I think about like it feels like a paradox at the same time too of what home is, right? Or it feels also like a tension at the same time too. And so I'm thinking about like what is that sense of responsibility that each one of us must own up to, must do in order for it to be home, in order for us to feel a sense of like belonging, in order for us to feel the safety that we need. And we each have a sense of responsibility in that, and we must take that responsibility on. And I think that the conversation sometimes is that we talk about these things and then we have these conversations and the fluff around the conversations. We love that. We love the fluffy things around these conversations. For example, around transformative justice, I think people love the fluffiness around it. It's going to be a totally no new way of being, but it's really hard stuff to do because people have to be responsible in the ways in which we engage with each other and the way in which we hold a sense of belonging to each other and a sense of how we are moving in our own feelings. And so I'm sitting with that at this moment as the responsibilityness of one another to each other and how far that responsibility needs to be carried and how much work it takes to actually implement and behave in responsible ways to each other.
I hear that yearning. I got you. Lone. Thank you, Pheng. What is it that you're fighting for? What you are yearning for?
Yeah, lately I've been reflecting a lot on even some of the language that we use or have access to about the kinds of solutions that our people know work because we've been building them, perhaps on the margins, in the shadows, as a means for survival, but as also as a means to like reclaim our own sense of humanity and power. And I've been really grappling with like what's it mean to move those solutions from being understood as alternatives to what currently exists to actually just being the standard and the norm, right? That yeah, to piggyback off of what Pheng was saying, right? Transformative justice shouldn't be the alternative. It should just be the way in which we live, because it's an expression that, as humans, we make mistakes. We make all kinds of mistakes. And what's it mean to have the containers and the consistency and the space to own those mistakes and to change and to grow and to develop as humans? And I think that's one of the things that I feel the most grief and pain around, is the ways in which that opportunity to develop as humans to our fullest potential has been robbed from us. And so that's what I want for us, right? And it's going to be messy and complicated. And I love people who annoy the shit out of me. I still love them, right? I still want what's best for them, and I'm sure there are people who feel that way about me, right? It's we all we all get it and we all deal it. But I've been sitting with that a lot, of like even in the language that we use when we're organizing and building power around our solutions. How do we really pierce through so that it's not just seen as an alternative to what is, and then it actually becomes what is true for everyone.
So I used to think that it was some like, you know, big concept of what I was fighting for. But as I've traveled the world, one of the things that I've learned is that what I yearn for and what I'm fighting for, I've seen it. I've seen it given to parts of the world and privileged people. And it's the basic, rights to water, rights to living free of violence, rights to not having every freaking gold and mineral from your land dug up and sent abroad. And so as I've traveled these countries in Europe and see that they have museums that are thousands of years untouched, or Iceland, or and they have like land that no one's ever stepped on, and in fact it's a crime to step on those things, and these moss have been growing for 2,000 years, and how beautiful that is. And then I travel to other parts of the world where everything is taken from, like land from Cambodia is being moved and shipped to China. And I think about that and I think about, what am I fighting for? The right that many people are often privileged people are just given and often fuck off and don't take good care of. And I wonder, for people like me, if those were things that were given to us. It's kind of like they take everything from us, from our communities, people like me, and then expect us to build beautiful things and expect us to build family and healthy communities and stuff when they've taken everything away. And so oftentimes what I'm yearning for, I'm fighting for, if those basic things were given, like we wouldn't have to fight for those basic things. And sometimes it's like, if you think about it, it people think it's like I'm yearning and fighting for this huge concept or this like magical thing, but in fact it's just the basic things that white cis hetero men get but don't know how to often steward. And so I'm really thinking about that as I've traveled the world, and I'm like, gosh, people still have that. Like our people don't have nothing. And so, yeah, fighting for some basic things that are just given to a privileged few.
Thank you all for engaging in that conversation, that question. And I know, like I said, for me, it changes quite all the time, as these questions get posed to me. And so I wanted to move us to sort of the next kind of set of conversations around doing some reflection. And I think, Gajra, you sort of started sharing some of that as you are experiencing the world and as you're seeing and reflecting in the last year, 10 years, 5 years of our own individual lives. And so I think this question that I'm about to ask is maybe take two answers from, I'll pose it to all of you, but maybe two people can just answer, is around like where and what do you see as Southeast Asian communities developing identities since the generations are changing and communities have been pushed to assimilate and acculturate. And I think that, as a 1.5, for me and my kids, what does connection to this like constantly changing identity mean for us? And so I want ask all of you to answer, but also I have only two because I think we're sort of short on time, and then I'll move into other questions. um, Peng, do you want to take that question? Let's start with you, please.
Yeah, I'm pondering about, I was just sharing this with you earlier, is I'm pondering about like, because there was a panel earlier that Chai and I were listening to as well too, and they had a conversation about housing policies and things like that at the federal level. And I was thinking, sitting in that conversation of like, what does it mean for me as a Hmong person situated in the context of this country and having no physical home, right? Homeland country, to Gajo's point, and being displaced continuously and trying to think about like, am is the resolution that I am a part of this bigger American diaspora and culture? Am I that? Because I certainly am that to the people that are in Laos when I go to Laos, and the Hmong folks there and my families there see me as American. They don't see me as belonging there or in space there. Or am I here as something else here, and then here in the States or in America, I am Hmong and I am Southeast Asian, right? Or I am Asian American, and that builds its own stuff. So I'm contemplating and sitting and grappling with the idea of like, what is the meaning making, and how do we take meaning out of this ever changing identity, and understanding that the push to be acculturated and assimilated and to be acclimated to the culture of this country is very real and is ever present and is ever there. And do we take part in that, and how do we take part in that and shaping that and claiming that? Or do we resist that and say that that is not us, and we build something on our own continuously and consistently, right? Or is it something in between that? Because I know, and I think about like my kids, and I'm sure they both speak English, right? They don't speak the native tongue, Hmong or Viet in that instance. And what is their relationship to identity, and to the identities that I'm talking about here? How are they making meaning out of that? And so that's what I'm sitting with in terms of grappling of like, where we've come this far as Southeast Asian folks and as Hmong folks, is that ever changing identity and our relationship to that, and then our relationship to the place making of where we're at, and the spaces that we are in connection to and we have relationship with, and how do we make meaning of all of that, and the generations to come after that, of like, where does that stand in relationship to our people who live abroad and in other places and spaces?
Thank you, Peng. Did anyone want to add anything to what Peng said? Did something that Peng said have you thinking about other things? You can also come on. Okay. Thank you for that, Peng. Um, so my next set of question is for M and Kajwa. And reason why is Freedom Inc. You all build a Black and Southeast Asian organization. And I think about the ways in which you've laid the foundation for a lot of other of our work within the Southeast Asian community. And you two have been working with each other for the last over 15 years or so now, or more. Um, what does it mean for you both to build Southeast Asian and Black solidarity? Can you both share a little bit around why this connection has been so vital to both communities and to the both of you?
Do you, I mean, have a preference of who goes first?
No.
Okay. I mean, I think since this is coordinated by you, like I think it for me it was such an almost a natural meshing of two communities, because I often talk about this, but when my family was resettled in the US in 1980, we were resettled in Philadelphia. And when we got off the plane, our first community that we were resettled with was in the heart of, it was a Black community. Uh, and I often talk about this, but my kindergarten class was me, my cousin, was actually me and my three other Hmong cousin, and the whole class was Black. And so that was my first America. That was my America that I knew. So to me, America has always been first Black. And then when we moved to Madison after a year relocating with to find our families, we also lived on the south side of Madison, which was predominantly Black. And so when I was creating a nonprofit or a movement hub called Freedom Inc. in Madison, I thought about it long term, and I said, who do you build movement with in White Wisconsin, where it's 90 something, almost 90% white? If we're gonna be fighting for liberation and freedom for the next 50 years, or at that time I didn't even think about 50 years. I just thought about in the next 10 years be fighting with. And of course, it was very natural for me that my neighbors and who I grew up and what I knew America to be was a Black America. And so I think that from that very start and understanding, it led me to understand who I was supposed to be building solidarity with. Number one. Number two, I think that I also grew up in the 80s and early 90s, where every mandate, every legislation, every policy that was meant to control Black and Brown, poor Black and Brown communities was impacted. Southeast Asians were impacted by, and so when one year I went off to college, and when I came back that year, pretty much everybody, every young male adult in my neighborhood had been arrested or was serving time. And so all of these legislation that was from loitering ordinance to, say no to drugs, like all of these things that was implemented or created to control Black families and poor Black communities impacted Southeast Asians, or impacted every Hmong person that I knew growing up that was also caught up in that system. And so to me, it was a very natural progression of like, who do I organize with? I organize with the people I live, places that I call home. And unfortunately, it happened to be Southeast Asian or Hmong, in my case, Hmong and Black. And so that's where my organizing and consciousness about who am I going to organize it with, my liberation tied to in this country. I'll pass it over to M as to how it started.
Interesting question. So
Mhm.
I'm from Milwaukee, and I'm from the north side of Milwaukee. And for people who don't know, Milwaukee was considered one of the most segregated cities in the country. And so when somebody told you what side of town they lived on, you knew, or if you knew the person's race, you could assume what side of town they lived on. And so where I grew up and how I grew up was all Black. You could drive in any direction of where I lived, and it would be just Black people living there. Had some experiences with, not a lot, but some experiences with Southeast Asian people who I didn't know to call Southeast Asian people at the time, through like some of the nail salons, like people was going to get their nails done and stuff. And so I grew up with a very particular lens about Black people, about white people, and then, and given the context of Milwaukee, about Mexican and Puerto Rican people. So that was very much my racial lens for the first set of years of my life. But along the way, when I got more and more involved in thinking about what was happening to Black people and what we need to do about it, I got introduced to Black feminisms. And one of the key and core idea of Black feminisms is that you have to be against all forms of oppression. You can't be for Black feminism, but then support somebody else's land being bombed, taken away, or them being brutalized. And then the other thing that you learn from your own experience of being Black is if they're going to screw over somebody else, they're really going to screw you over. And so my inclination for solidarity started to happen early on. And then a few key things happened. So as I started getting more involved in movement, and I was like, oh, I actually want to get some skills. I want to be good at this. I started to study. I started to read everything I could, learn all these different histories. How did the civil rights movement happen? Just sort of all these questions. And I could start to see ways in which many of the Black leaders who I really loved and revered had built solidarity across the globe, but also across race and class lines. So it was like elements of the Black civil rights movement were learning from like Gandhi's work and nonviolent civil disobedience, right? And there was a bilateral relationship there, et cetera. So that really opened me up to being like, to get free from the principle and from the value, you've got to be for a liberation for everybody. But the actual practice is going to require all of us. And I want to emphasize that point because right now we are learning that lesson in a very painful way. We have an enemy. The far right is an enemy. And an enemy is somebody who is trying to destroy you. It's not an opposition. Opposition is just somebody you disagree with. They have an agenda. They have a plan to try to destroy us. And it's not just only destroying Black people, it is destroying so many of us. So we're learning in real time what it means when you have an enemy who is clear about building a pro white supremacy, pro capitalist, pro patriarchal society. It means the destruction of Black and brown, indigenous people, et cetera, et cetera. So as I was learning more and thinking more about what it actually took to win, to create these homes that we've been talking about and yearning for, it means to work seriously with anybody else who's serious about freedom. And so when I had the opportunity to engage with Freedom Inc. And then started to organize with Freedom Inc., I did it with that mind, with the clarity of Black feminism teaching me if you're about liberation, you got to be about it for everybody, right? Seeing, even without having the historical context, that something's going on with these Vietnamese people because the North Side poor and they over here too at the nail shop, right? Gaining that kind of clarity. And there's chemicals and shit in there. These ain't good working conditions, right? So being able to piece together the experiences of my own life and then applying the science to say, our enemy, they're coming together for their agenda. We, as people who believe in liberation, need to come together and advance our agenda. And so that made, to me, very a clear and what felt like an even natural way of engaging with Freedom Inc. And then working on organizing with Kajwa to say, let's build a serious Black and Southeast Asian movement here. Because we actually have a lot of points of connection, points of alignment, and we are being brutalized by the same set of systems.
Thank you for that, and Kajwa, for answering that question. And this is the moment, I guess, to invite Lone to be part of that conversation. As you are spearheading Lone, one of the an organization that is doing mass mobilization and mass organizing around different issues and people. What does it mean for you as a Southeast Asian person to lead this effort? And how do you see Southeast Asian communities' connection to the building the bigger we, or how have our communities led or followed in creating the bigger we? So yeah, the invitation is to you to join that conversation. Those questions.
Yeah, thanks, Chhaya. Yeah, so I grew up in North Carolina. I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, right? And I grew up in East Charlotte, which was predominantly Black. And then I grew up in West Charlotte, which was predominantly Black, right? And that was the story of, I think, a lot of Southeast Asian immigrants and refugees in that period of time. And in a lot of ways, my experience really mirrors, some of the questions that Kajwa and M are speaking to, right? It was it was impossible for me to just live my life, much less to organize without being confronted with, engaging with, and internalizing the depth of the Black radical tradition. And I don't come to the work of coalitions accidentally, right? Like it was just you just knew that if you were having an organizing meeting around an anti-deportation campaign, that of course you would be meeting in the fellowship hall of a Black Baptist church. It was just like a given, right? Like that was the conditions of the organizing, and that is the result of many centuries of struggle in North Carolina and across the South, where folks had to figure out how to build meaningful solidarity with each other across race lines, across physical railroad tracks, across all of those kinds of borders, neighborhood by neighborhood. And so from the very beginning, right, I was very clear that coalition work was was where it was happening, right, where some of the most transformative work could take place, and also where some of the most challenging work can take place, right? Because as much as I learned about what it meant to organize meaningful multiracial solidarity, it also, I had to also wrestle with my sense of um, uh, race being understood in the US often in a very either white or Black way. And I'm not using that in the same way that liberals often use that, right? Not at all. It was just a part of the material reality, right, of like how those conversations were had. And so I had to get really comfortable being in the discomfort of that. And I also had to get used to there are things that folks are just not going to know, right? There are things that we don't know about each other that we have to make the space to learn about each other. And I think that's part of what in Rising Majority's work has been the most profound, and taking sort of the question of white people completely out of the equation. I think as folks of color, as Black, Brown, Indigenous communities, we also have a number of our own internal contradictions, right, around class, around gender, around migration status, around disability, a whole host of questions. And so then what does it mean to figure out what the shared vision is, right, and be committed to that? And a friend and comrade of mine, Margot Okazawa Ray, also one of the founding members of the Combahee River Collective, she says we have to work out our identities on the way towards a shared vision, and not the other way around, right? Because it's not going to work otherwise. Trying to figure out how to get everyone to, and I think this was some of what, Pheng was talking to earlier. At the end of the day, we're not all going to be the same. And we're actually probably going to have lots of disagreements. But figuring out the shared pathway, because we're, or at least the shared direction, and then the multiple pathways that can lead us there is going to be really critical. And I think specific to sort of the Southeast Asian experience in this bigger we, all of us here know a lot of times the conversations around immigration in the US is really narrow. And that's not because, and we have to challenge that precisely to M's point. We have to figure out how to fight for everyone, right? I'm not sure that folks understand the depth and the complexity and the intensity with which Black immigrants, Southeast Asian immigrants, are targeted and criminalized in this country, right? That we have loved ones who have been in and out of prisons, right? That face deportation threats, and that's not to lower the bar for everyone, but that is to pay homage to what other folks have already spoken to, the very long history of slavery, of genocides, of wars that have to be factored into why it is people are forced to move, right? Our people don't just get on boats and risk their lives and their children's lives for nothing, right? There's a material reality that forces our people to do that. And our people have been steadfast and brave in doing that. And we shouldn't have to be, but we've done it, right, for a very long time. And so I like to think that we've been able to, in the solidarities that we've forged in organizing, from our own experiences, complicating the conversation, that we've also been able to keep an important and healthy internationalist perspective in the kinds of struggles that are being taken, that are taking place in the U.S. That there's no way to fight for power here without accounting for the global majority and the global South. And what does that mean for our specific sort of responsibility is something that Rising Majority takes really seriously, that I personally take really seriously. And I think it's always I think it's a negotiation. I think it's a back and forth. I think it's a live experiment in learning in terms of where do we lead and where do we follow. But I think most importantly, how do we create the kinds of movements that allow all of us to lead? Because I do think that now more than ever, that is really critical. And how do we do that with a lot of discipline, but mostly with a lot of like honesty and care and love? Because I think that's what our folks are also needing to see right now, right? That there is a way through this and there is a way out of this, and our movements are capable of doing that and holding our folks in all of their complexities and contradictions.
Thank you, Lone. I invite other folks if you want to respond to or add on to what Lone is saying, to the reminder that we are who we are and we are the people we've been waiting for, all of that. And so actually, Pheng, can I go back to you real quick here before we move on to the new section around, I think, this idea of, for you, founding Man Forward, like, I think the questions that come up for me is around like, what has it been for you to find connection and belonging in your work, as you were pioneering like these new concepts of masculinity and manhood and community? And why do you think it's so necessary to have not only men, and masculine folks undo patriarchal practices, but that we all have to participate, right, in ending it, to end the patriarchal violence within our communities and outside of our community. And so I imagine that's been a journey for you, that's been a process for you, and you've manifested into the work that you've been doing. So I wanted to see if you wanted to share a little bit more from that perspective and that experience.
Yeah, no, thank you for that question, Chhaya. I think about, as I sit here and I sit to what was shared by Casual Alone and I think about that. It's such a pivotal conversation and question around solidarity and what that means to ourselves as individuals, to the multiple ways in which we hold different identities, and then to the communities that we are in relationship to and the relationships that we each hold. And to that point, I think the relationship for myself to that of what it means to be a man and masculine has always been something that I have grappled with and thought about and tried to make meaning of like, what does it really mean and what does it really say about who I am? And I think the learning from a lot of that, to the point about solidarity, is that I had to actually build relationships and connections and find places of belonging and places that call home with people, many of which are on this call, right? And many of which are on this panel. Relationship, I think one ideal relationship that I talk about often, that Kajra and I talk about, is the relationship that she and I have. For me, in order for me to understand the work and the undoing and deconstructing of patriarchal violence, even within myself and my own ways and behaviors, and the disrupting of the what people would deem to be toxic masculinity, was to be in relationship with women folks and queer people, not as a burden for them, but as my own journey of reconnecting to who I am and what it is that it means to be me, and being able to have the right, being able to have the right to define that and self-define that for myself without others having to define that for me. And I think that that's the other part of this fighting for, is the self-determine what it is that I want and how it is that I want to live my life and how it is that I want to be cared for, and being able to actually, in the solidarity piece of it, to others and in building community with others, is asking for what it is that I also need as well in that, in terms of like how to be cared for in that and how to be helped in that, as well too, and learning that and learning how to do that in a way that isn't burdensome to others or isn't going to be because it's my right, right? But can I ask? And how will that be cared for in that ask? And the responsibility in that ask of myself, of what I am asking for, can I be responsible for that when it is given or returned to me? And so I think that the journey and trying to connect all of the dots here for me in the pioneering and understanding of new ways of being masculine, it is that trying to be free and not limit my own limitations, but it is also the deepening in the ways in which I build relationship and have been in relationship with many of you in very intimate and deep ways, not just as comrades, not just as co-conspirators, not just as colleagues, but as family and as friends, as siblings, in the many ways in which we need to actually build relationship with each other, right? When it comes down to it, I really believe that we have to build many and multiple ways of being in relationship with each other. In order for us to love each other, there has to be multiple ways of us to show in those relationships how we actually love. The transparency and the trust is built on that as well too, on the multiple ways, so that when conflict does happen, we may be in conflict as colleagues, but as siblings we may not be in conflict. So at least that siblinghood could hold uh, the conflict in a way that colleagues we couldn't hold that conflict, right? And it allows us to carry each other and see each other and still move with one another in that way. And so I think that deepening for myself needed to happen with internally, but externally as well too, and it ebbs and flow between the ways in which we build community and find solidarity and also solitude perhaps in each other, or within myself as well too.
And if I could add
Yeah,
to that,
please. Come
I think
on.
the question about patriarchy is so, so important. And I think it is key right now. So, unfortunately, too often we think about patriarchy as an afterthought, that if we just get these other things right first, then we can come back to domestic violence. But here's the thing about patriarchy, at its core, it teaches domination, right? It's one of the oldest forms of systemic domination. Patriarchy is a precursor to fascism and authoritarianism. If you are constantly taught every day by everybody around you, by your family members, your parents, people down the street, the institutions, the broader culture, if you're taught that you have no right to your body, that someone can beat you, rape you, tell you you're not whatever gender, assigned sex, etc., can deny you access to care for your body, can tell you, hey, the police get to beat you. And if you flinch because it hurts, then they get to shoot you. When you teach a group of people that their very body can be dominated in that way structurally, then convincing people or taking people to the next phase of that, imperialism, war, colonization, is an easy step. One of the first things that our enemy does, and you see it happening now, is very much build out a patriarchal agenda. The misogyny is rampant, right? The problem is these women need to get back in the home and need to just be having babies, right? They call them natalists. There's a whole group of them on the far right. Or you shouldn't be doing this immoral thing. How dare you try to change your body? Something anti-trans, something against abortion, something about, the way kids and girls dress in schools. All of this is patriarchy. All of this is teaching people forms of domination and to get used to it. The minute we start thinking that that is natural, that actually there's a given order, that there is some group who belongs on top and has the right, the authority, and the moral reason to dominate, to oppress, to subjugate another group, the fascism is right there. The colonization is right there. Right? So it is so important that those of us who are serious about freedom are anti-patriarchal. And more than that, that we become feminists. Got nothing to do with your gender. It got nothing to do with who you dating, right? I think folks in this call are pushing us to think about our politics and not just our identities, right? Got nothing to do with your body and who you like. It's got to do with your belief that that domination shouldn't exist. And so we have to resist every single form of it. Because when we didn't say, wait a minute, why are all of these random trans attacks happening across the states? When we didn't unite and consolidate against that, and then they said, oh, yeah, let's go another step. Let's take away abortion access and rights, right? And when we didn't jump up and say, how dare you, how could you? Then they said, oh, yeah, let's go a step further. Let's get ready for war. Let's support genocide. Let's drop bombs. Let's pay for bombs to be dropped, right? I think it's really important that we resist every form of subjugation, and patriarchy is one of the oldest forms and one of the most, I would say, disgusting and insidious forms, because it's taught to us as though it's natural. And it's taught to us as though it should be private and you shouldn't speak about the way your body is being dominated. But we actually need to center those conversations.
Right on them. That is natural. That is cultural. And so thank you for that. And I just think about loan. Let come into the conversation. And as we're like literally witnessing, right? The U.S. waging a war against Iran, funding the genocide in Palestine, and we're witnessing, folks standing up for ICE and the Trump administration crackdown in Los Angeles and all over the country, right? How does a lived experience as a refugee fit within this overarching narrative? Like, how, yeah, how is it, and how are you experiencing, and what is rising majority? How are you corralling all of us together as well?
Thanks, Chaya. And I'm going to build off of some of what, Em just shared, that what we're seeing right now with the, ongoing, to be clear, there's until it's not over till it's over, right? We have to ensure not only that the US does not move towards any more aggression on Iran, it's not over. Until the genocide of Palestinians in Gaza ends, it's not over, right? And I think part of what Em was saying that resonates with me and is part of what we know as immigrants and refugees and displaced people, is that when there are no consequences for the violent decisions and oppressive harm that is created, then what is considered acceptable just constantly shifts and changes, right? Part of why the United States dropped those bombs on Iran is because of the impunity that has been afforded to Israel for over 600 days. And so if you look at that situation and you say, yeah, Israel can murder over 55,000 people, and that's a conservative estimate. If it can enable the starvation of nearly 2 million people, and then shoot and kill those seeking for aid, then basically the entire world is up for grabs, right? And it doesn't just have an impact. It obviously, the sort of ground zero of that violence, that harm, is in Palestine, but it's also having implications for the entire region. But then it also has implications for the Democratic Republic of Congo and Sudan, because it has completely, and Haiti, it has completely rearranged the international terrain, right, of what is expected from the U.S., what the U.S. can aid and abet in, and what it can, allow to continue to happen. And so I think for those of us who come directly out of or are part of families that have lived through wars, and are connected to those who are living through wars and genocides currently, we know that all of these things eventually also boomerang, right? It is no coincidence that ICE ICE was founded in the same year that the invasion on Iraq began, because we needed to have essentially a so-called domestic counterbalance to what the United States was seeking to do in other parts of the world. That they needed to create a story of fighting so-called terrorism at home and abroad. And now we've seen, our Muslim, Arab, Southwest Asian, Black, brown immigrant communities under surveillance in this so-called war on terror for more than 20 years, right? So all of the pieces are connected, and I think for anyone who is concerned about the semblance, the modicum of democracy that is left, I know it hasn't worked for our people for a very long time, but if you're concerned about that and you're concerned about what is possible and what's needed to be done, and if you're concerned about the fight against authoritarianism, we have to be telling that story, right? That the United States actually cannot act with impunity. And if we believe that it does, at the end of the day, it's still our most vulnerable communities who are going to be kidnapped, abducted, killed in the streets. And so we have to be able to say, the US war machine is not just something that exists outside of these borders. It's the militarization of police, it's the deployment of the National Guard, it's the criminalization of the poor and working class people, right? It's all connected, and it's going to be hard work, right? To, I think, really solidify and socialize those ideas, because I think, to the earlier question, our folks have also taken up assimilation and acculturation as a means for survival, right? And so our folks are also like, I'm done with that. I am here now. Let me hustle. Let me make my money. Let me figure out my piece of this. And we have to figure out, a way to keep breaking through. And so I think at the end of the day, there is nothing that is inherently radical about who we are because we come from this particular experience. But we are radical based on the choices and decisions that we make, right? To continue to align with what is righteous, what is historically true, and what is actually going to get our people free.
Thank you all for that. I know we're like running low on time too, and I'm always reminded when you all speak that an empire is an empire is an empire is an empire inside and out. So as we experience an empire, and I've always said too, like the United States and climate change, creates the most refugees in this world, and so they have a responsibility, and we as folks from in the belly of the beast have to fight really hard to be alive, to live, or to be alive. And so that reminders always gives me the energy and the heart to be on the streets, to be among you all, to continue to be in this work. And so I want to move us to the last part of this discussion, which is around like, how do we reimagine what is next for us and our people, what is next in this world, in this country, and as we look to the next 50 years and beyond. What are the pressing issues that we need to address for our communities to thrive? What does healing and empowerment look like for us moving forward? What is the call to action? What is the call to our people? What is the mandate? What is the reminder? So I invite you all to share those thoughts around reimagining what the next 50 year and beyond look like for us to thrive. And anyone can go first. And I'll let the first person choose the next person.
Okay. I mean, I guess I can go. I really love how we started this year off. I mean, this is our 50th year here. Um, and I think I really love this concept that you brought, Chaya, is like, had we resettled ourselves, what would Southeast Asian families and communities, what would we had done differently? And so I think about that question as I'm looking towards the next 50 years, but I also reflect back to see what we did really well with what we had. And so, what would I keep and what would I change in reflection and also in the next 50 years? I think that our communities took care of each other very well. I think the fact that Southeast Asians, we came to this country as kind of like enemies to each other and strangers to each other. But Viet, Hmong, Cambodians, Laotians, we found solidarity in each other, and I think that, the testament of that is Southeast Asian Freedom Network. To have stayed together, to have known that we were not friends or friendly to each other because of circumstances that we had to survive, but that we have stayed together and we have created a political narrative that today we can claim. When we say Southeast Asian liberation, we actually know what that means. And so we did something right. Um, in addition to that, I think that, particularly in the Hmong women, Hmong feminist movement, we've really created a movement that can be taught and studied and learned by other Asian Americans or other communities of color, and that we redefined what it meant to keep women and children and queer people safe in our communities. We created programs, we created thought analyses, we created responses, community responses, we created accountability to our community. We've changed hearts and minds within the Hmong community to understand what victim blaming is. So I think that we've done something really great within the Hmong feminist movement. The other piece that I want to talk about is I think that we need to continue to organize. For a minute, I was like losing hope and saying, ICE is picking everybody up. What are we going to do? And then the uprising in LA happened. I'm like, perfect fight, place to pick a fight. Thank you. Like I was feeling kind of, but I'm like, come on, LA, do it for everybody. And so I think that even when this new administration came into play and everybody was panicking, I innately understood where the solution was, and the solution is organized, one person at a time, mobilized on the ground. And so I think that the ground, we need to go back to our basics. We need to really organize. Those of us who are still local, we need to do that, and people need to pour resources into the ground game. And people can continue to analyze, and you all can continue to be thought leaders for us on the national level, but understand that it is the thought leadership and the ideas and things that you all are coming up with, we must put back into practice. And that for those of us who are on the ground, we need to hit the doors and we need to do our one-on-ones again, and we just need to hit the streets. And then the other thing I want to talk about is mutual aid. I think that I learned because I am Hmong, because of the nature of how my people have survived for thousands of years, assimilation, acculturation, annihilation, genocide, that we've created a community where we've caretake for each other. And so one of the things that I've seen that has changed the course of my people, just even at Dia's legacy, in purchasing this farm that has 26 acres, I've seen it house people who are undocumented. I've seen it feed people who don't have the finances. 1 acre of land is feeding a whole community. Right now, 17 Hmong elders are farming, and I guarantee you that small little piece of land can feed the whole community if a pandemic was to start again. And so I really think about that kind of ground game, and I really think about like what it's going to take for us to continue to thrive, and for us to continue to be able to envision what a healthy 50 years is going to look like. And so yeah, I'm all over the place, but really, I mean, I think we have it down. We just need to pour in, and we need to resource up, and we need to build bigger on the things that have been working. So I will send it to Lone.
Thank you. Jay, we are
Wait, Lone, you sound a
running
little bit
on
robotic.
this
You really in
moment.
outer space, Lone.
Oh no,
You really
I
went to
sure
the
am.
galaxy, Lone. I sort of love it, but it's the no, Lone. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. Say something.
Star Wars, Star Wars.
No, let you mute and unmute and do what you gotta do, and I'll call it back on you. Back. Lone is just trying to say that they're gonna leave this planet. That's what they're trying to say in the next 50. I'm joking, Lone. Come help us out here. Bring us home and then paying you next. And Lone, you welcome to come back to Earth as you fix that. And over here, Kadra's over here sideways. I don't know what's going on. Come on, M.
I'm like, yeah, what happened here to our crew? So where we go, what happens in the next few years, 50 years, is going to be determined by what we can do in the next 18 months. So we're in a key period of history. For those who would like to geek out around this, it's called an interregnum. And that means we're in a period of history where one way of doing something is dying or coming to an end, and a new way is being created. The question for us is, what is going to be the new way? Right now, our enemies are proposing a new way. They're saying the new way should be far right. It should be authoritarianism, that they should strip away any particular aspects of democracy or popular or people engagement. It should try to make as much money as it can, even more money than what it's making. And it doesn't matter who it kills or people or the planet. The thing about this moment, this interregnum, is that in order to go from the old way to the new way, there's this period where things are unstable and things are unclear. And guess what? Most people think things are unstable. We actually have a really good organizing opportunity. This ain't like 8 years ago, however many years, no, 10, whatever years ago, when Obama was in the White House and I was trying to convince Black people that, hey, something's wrong here. And they like, what you mean? We love Michelle, right? Actually, most people think something is wrong. Most people are upset by how much everything costs. People don't know why we sending money, sending troops to be bombing people. People don't know why Trump is always doing something else, doing too much. A lot of people are upset, and granted, for very different reasons. But because we're in this period where things are unstable, that says to me that we have a chance, that those of us who believe in freedom, that those of us who believe in liberation, that we have a chance to be the thing that stabilizes or chooses what comes out of this instability. So we have a task, we have a charge that in the next 18 months, we have to stop the far right and we have to build our communities. That's it. That's our shared objective. We have to do those two things, because if we don't, everything that I just said earlier about home will be much harder. The planet is already, the climate in ways is collapsing already, right? Our enemy is going to make it worse, so much worse in the next few years if we don't stop them. So not only do we imagine that some parts of like Miami, et cetera, will be underwater, but it's going to be way worse for everybody in so many ways, right? So we have to act, and we have to act in big ways. So like Kaja said, if you are on the ground base building, talk to even more people. That's actually your charge right now. You have to. If you are an action taker, get outside. Go out there. There's actions, big actions happening all of the time. Join them. If you are an educator, teach people about justice and liberation. If you like, well, my bag is helping people, I like helping people. Help them, but also help their understanding of what is happening, right? So that they can actually have agency in creating the world that they want. We have a big responsibility. We do not have time, right? We don't have the time that we thought we had 5 years ago where we could say, oh, we're going to take our time and build generation after generation. No. We got to speed this up. We have to speed this up. And nobody's going to do this for us. We have to free ourselves. As June Jordan says, we are the ones we've been waiting for. So how I think we get to the next 50 years and what it can look like all the things we've been saying. It's going to require that we think about ourselves, but beyond ourselves. It's going to require that if you're in LA or Washington State or whatever, that you give a damn about the data center in Memphis. Because what the client teaches us, the climate teaches us, what happens over there will be a storm in your neighborhood the next day, right? So we can't say that doesn't matter, that's over there. No, that fog, that smoke, that wildfire is coming to you, right? So we have to care about ourselves, but also think beyond ourselves. We have to organize. We got to be on the ground. We got to take action, and we have to punch and fight back. When things are happening in your neighborhood and you don't like them, don't get mad at your neighbor. Get mad at Trump. When something is happening at the school and you don't like it, get mad at Elon. There are people we can point to who are directly responsible for the things that are happening in our communities. And if we do it, my God, if we do it, we will build home. We will build home. And that is what the next 50 years could look like. But only, comrades, if we meet the moment, block the far right, and build our communities at the same time.
Right on them. Right on. Depending where the wind blow is gonna come your way. Depending where the wind blow. And you mad at the wrong person. These are the things that we be saying to our people all the time. And so Lone, are you back on this planet with us? Let's hear you.
I don't know, y'all. Am I?
Yes, you
Oh,
are.
thank goodness.
Yes.
Thank goodness. I wasn't trying to leave that
It was
quickly.
hilarious.
I was not trying to leave that quickly. I mean, I think Em's covered a lot of it. I think the question in this near term is how are we building power and how are we waging defensive fights in a way that actually sets us up and plants the seeds for what's to come. I think the immediate task of expanding the coalition, anyone who is anti Trump, we have to figure out how to move together. Now, the question of who stays with us on the other side is not a given, right? And we've seen that historically, that you can move a group of people through a tumultuous time and you might not have them on the other side. And I think the plea that I'm making to all of us collectively is how do we stop learning the same mistakes? How do we get out of the cycle of looking back on a period of mass consciousness raising, mass mobilization, and be like, damn, we didn't bring people in. I am tired of learning that same lesson. And I think that there's a point at which we have to stop admiring or venerating what the issue is. And I think that this is a moment to synthesize, right? I think this is a moment to figure out if we are doing mutual aid, how do we be clear that that mutual aid is grounded in power building, and that power building may not fix the problem immediately, but we know that it is planting the seeds for the kinds of institutions we need in the future, right? That if we're going to be contending in the electoral arena, not only are we trying to get candidates in and champions in, shout out to New York City, you fixed my mental health for at least a week, thank you very much, that we actually build the infrastructure to co-govern, right? How do we make sure that when we effectively get our cities to divest from Israel bonds, we're getting them to reinvest that into jobs, into schools, into climate resiliency, right? Like it is a massive both and moment. And it's a moment for strategy, but I also think it's a moment for instinct and for heart, right? We know what we have to do. And we know that we have to make a leap. And we know that there's going to be some of us who have to tend to the fires that are right in front of us. And then there are going to be folks that have to run ahead so that they can tell us what's to come. And we have to be able to honor all of that and figure out how to coordinate all of those pieces, right? And I think if we can demonstrate to our people that we can actually win some things right now and in the long term, we'll have the folks who will stick with us through to the other side. And then maybe I don't have to go out into outer space. I like it here on Earth with y'all. I do.
I like you here on Earth too, Lone. Am I still echoing? Okay, I'm not. Good. Yes, Lone, we love that you are here. Pheng, please join us in the last question here.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add. I would just say echo and ditto to yes to meeting the moment, yes to the people, as the resources. We may not have a lot of resources, but we have the people. And yes to organizing, because that is the ultimate piece that we know and that we've been so good at and so resilient at. And a yes to the power building and the collective shaping of what power means, that each one of us have that innately within us to actually do that together collectively, to be able to build that together. And I think about this reimagination of like the possibilities and the opportunities that comes about in our communities. And we have been creative. We've been very creative in the ways in which we have moved. And our people have been really thoughtful about how they have moved as well too in the building. So nothing more than what is already shared, but I understand that our people will still be here and will still be here long after all of this and will participate in the new shaping of whatever this new shape is through our children and through our children's children as well too, and that legacy of living and being is with, I believe, all of us as well too. So that is my piece of it.
Thank you, Peng. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, Movement Loves, for the reminder again, for the mandate, for the call to action, to the building of the bigger we. Stay in the movement, you all. I know, like, there's probably young folks looking this. We've been at it for a very long time, and so stay. Choose us. Choose movement, and choose movement love. Find people. I think the endpoint. Squat the hell up. Find your squads, whatever corner of the street corners of the house, housing complex. I come from the Bronx, so we know what that is, and that I want to remind all of us that we are serious about freedom and liberation. And so I hope that from this call, that we are serious about building a better future for all of us in the next 50 years and beyond, and that we actually need to accelerate, and we do believe in liberation and freedom for everyone. And so with that, I wanted to say thank you to my panelists. Thank you to the folks in the tech in the back, and for all the little laughs and all the reminders and the joy and all those moments you've given us today and the stories. Thank you for sharing, each of you, for you to share about you. And so I love that about us, and I love movement, but we got to move faster, and that the power is the people. Have a good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Until soon. I know there's going to be a lot of follow up emails and all those things that you see in the bottom here. I was telling Lone earlier, we like some CNN stuff here, but we real, we for real. So we'll send you all more details, and more action links, etc. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Love you all very much. And until soon. Bye.